got a good man coming up here. His name is Fore. I said, Joe, is there any tagline, something you kind of want me to say before I present? And this is what he said. This is great. The purveyor of the socially obvious. Ladies and gentlemen, Fore.
I just realized how simple this is going to be. I'm standing on the world's largest easy button. Can you see that from here? Yeah. So, no worries, all right? So basically, we have your brain, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about your brain on digital in some respects, all right? And when we talk about your brain on digital, we're going to just take a look at a few of the aspects that are affecting your brain and the way that you can then use your brain, use the different things that surround you, digitally speaking, to ascertain and then create, innovate, and push forward, right? And so all these illustrations, because I love art as much as, any artists in here? Yeah. Okay, as much as the rest of you, every single one of these is illustrated by a gentleman named Jason Nauman. So what makes the brain happy? It's a no-brainer. Pun very much intended. Sensory components make us happy. Our brain loves feedback. The back of that eyeball right there, that retinal area, sends billions of neural stimulations to the back of our little brain here, right? To where the occipital lobe begins to pull that in. Now we have music, right? And we have audio. And audio then goes into the temporal lobes, and it agitates, and we love it. Our brain likes that. That's what we like. That's what we want. It is there. It is what we need. As a matter of fact, I always like to say that there are only 3 really miraculous things ever given to us in this world. One is faith, the other one is music, and then there's coffee. All right? So these are the things our brains like. And our brains absolutely, positively, the parietal lobe absolutely loves to touch things, right? We want to feel. How do you think tablets took off like they did? Well, besides the fact that they're fun and cheap and exciting, and there's apps, right? All right, so this is probably the most underscored of all of the, or it's not even underscored actually, but it's probably the thing that drives us the most. What are our brains like? Other brains. It's why you're sitting here looking at me. It's why there's going to be this broadcast of these crazy people talking today, because other people want to see other people talking about other things, which is why we have a Facebook and we have a Google+. We have all these options. Now, the frontal lobe, we could probably, within their, our rationale, say that Facebook is not very rational or very happy most of the time, especially when it gets hacked, right? Yeah, so, all right. This is the one, though, this is the part of the brain that we possibly don't think about enough. And that is the fact that the brain loves change and variation. Our brain loves new things, and we've let that go too often. Matter of fact, for decades, almost centuries, they thought brains cannot develop new neural pieces within them, right? But then they discovered through birds, of all things, that basically if a bird just learns a new song, it actually can begin to generate some new neural tissue, which is stinking amazing if you think of it, isn't it? You can grow new brains simply by learning something new. How important, how magnificent is that, right? And I'm sugarcoating some of this, obviously, but we get the idea, right? So this is what I want you to do. I want you to suspend your idea of what all these agitating pieces within your brain are, and I want you to think of a paint can. That is one component of how we agitate and stimulate that part of the brain. So I'm just dipping my finger in there and I'm swirling it around, and what happens with the paint, obviously, right? Yeah, you got it. And what I want you to do is think of your brain as being a whole bunch of pots of paint, all different colors, right? And now, to learn, to retain knowledge, we have a canvas. And every time we spill the paint out, learning happens, okay? Everybody got it? Let's move on. Cauliflowers and circuits. How many of you know what a front-side bus on a computer is, or whether or not your data is being sent in a serial or parallel fashion? How many of you, yeah, I got a couple nerds in the crowd. I love it. Yes. How many of you know the difference between bytes and bits and how many bits make a kilobit? And a lot of us don't know that, but I guarantee nearly every single one of you knows why a cauliflower is white and the leaves on it are green. Because it doesn't participate in photosynthesis. Boom, right? And the reason why you know that is because we were taught that in school. And why were we taught that in school? We were taught about vascular bundles and xylem and phloem and all this stuff because we were supposed to understand and be able to appreciate the surroundings, our life, what we come in contact with, right? Problem, what do we come in contact with now? What am I holding in my hand? What do I have in my pocket? Not cauliflower. I think you get the idea. I think we're missing something in our world, in our schools, right? In our lives that we don't appreciate, and this is kind of sums it up. This is just what I have to say. I don't know if you can agree or not. No idea what happened in my text, but that's all right. We have used simple concepts, zeros and ones, to build these gigantic mechanisms that make us forget completely about zeros and ones themselves, right? Isn't that amazing that we've actually done something like that? We'd use these super simple concepts so that we don't ever have to think about them and don't appreciate them and can't use them. All right, so this is really what we need to do. We don't just want to agitate and stimulate. We actually want to dip down in there, get our paintbrush, swirl it around, and begin to carve out deep learning, deep-rooted understanding, don't we? That's the way we retain knowledge. Just learning something is one thing. Retaining it is another. So now we have this concept, another divergence. This is something in our world that has really changed the architecture of society more than anything. It has at least changed the way that our brains can function and can work. Whenever I do speaking engagements at schools, this is the thing that freaks people out, the offshoring of stuff. All I mean is the cloud, that precipitous, crazy, weird thing that someday may rain on us, right? The cloud is the place where we can design and create and engineer things now. We don't even have to have it on our computer. And what it changes is it changes the way that we can give and get things. But that's all life is, actually. So if we're changing the way we give and get things, we're actually changing life. Think about education. All teachers do is give information. Students give information to each other when they collaborate, and then we assess and get it back. In the world of communication, that's what we do. We give and get. But now we have completely revolutionized, and I don't think we're taking some of this seriously enough. We revolutionize people the way we get and give things, which means we've revolutionized our lives, which is why it's absolutely amazing that all these illustrations were done yesterday and this morning. As a matter of fact, some of them have been done while the other presenters were presenting. I'm dead serious, because the guy over in Michigan, Jason, was illustrating them and uploading them to my presentation that is now live to you, all from the comfort of his Michigani home, right? It's amazing. All right, so now we have, this is just my statement. Somebody else once upon a time said, the future's here, it's not evenly distributed. Poppycock. Honestly, cloud, internet, smartphones are so ubiquitous these days. Our real problem is the future's here, we just haven't figured out how to leverage it yet. That's our problem. Our schools need to figure it out. Our teachers need to figure it out. You need to figure it out. So now I got to keep cooking here, because honestly, the outsourcing of brains is the next part that really impacts our brains and the way that we think and the way that we socialize and everything. And outsourcing of brains has to do with this. How many countries in this world have Georgetown as a capital? Go ahead. Reach for your brains. Pick them out of your pocket. Yeah. One. Okay. I'll let you guys figure this out on your own, and if you want to yell it out later, that's totally fine. But the point is that you can pull your brains out of your pocket. You don't actually have to know anything anymore. At least that's what people like to try and tell us, right? But speaking of Google Maps, where's this at? It's right there. It's right behind this wall pretty much. Some of us probably walked past this stinking thing today. Some of us drove past it, but we didn't pay attention to it because we've outsourced our brains so much that we're looking at our phones to see where the little blue triangle is, right? To make sure we're there, that we're not looking around, right? Seriously. This is a detrimental thing, but if you think I'm a naysayer on Google Maps, try diving in subaquously to the Grenada waters from your own home, and you will never be a naysayer of Google Maps again, because you can go scuba diving anytime you want because someone with a big video camera on their head swam around for you. All right, so here's this. This is important. This is impressive. This is amazing. All this is data transmission. That's it. This right here is experimental. This one is like what we see, right? And there's a 5-year lag, that's all. But it's as resilient and as guaranteed as Metcalfe's and Moore's law, that it almost doubles every other year-ish, something like that, which means that someday, not in the very distant future, if we look at our experimental records of how fast we can transmit data through things as crazy as light waves, we're going to be able to download, pass on, do anything we want like that from anywhere we want. And it's going to be insane in the short-term future. All right? Which leads us to be able to do this from anywhere, anytime, anyhow. Right? All right? So we have to be careful of this. There are study after study after study that actually has proved that we have been too connected, way too ridiculously connected. Whereas today I talked with at least 2 people who, while they were talking to me, were probably texting on their phone, right? And when they go home, they're going to text, tweet, Facebook, search the internet, check their 153 emails that they missed because they were here at this, right? And we are so hyper-connected that it begins to drive us a little bit mad. Now, is that connection bad? Not necessarily. You can talk with, I'll get to this one in a second. You can talk with people like, I'll tell you a little story about Mr. Paul, who took 1 year off of the internet completely. And you know what he said when he got back? I was wrong. Yeah. Basically, it wasn't corrupting him like he thought it was. It wasn't driving him batty like he thought it was. Turns out that the social problems that he had on Facebook played out just in a different fashion at the coffee store, okay? But we have to functionally understand that there are detriments to being hyper-connected like this, right? And I do workshops on connectedness and this stuff. This is the other part, functionally, digitally. And I have to fly here, but honestly, when we read, this is just a quick snippet of what our brain how our brain has adapted and evolved to understand and absorb digital things. When we read left-hand side of most of our hemispheres, right, usually our left hemisphere, functional MRI scans, we can watch a person read, lights up. As soon as they begin to read online, though, your brain goes insane, basically, because when you look at a hyperlink, think about something as simple as this. First thing you have to decide when you look at a hyperlink is you have to go, is that a blue underlined word or is that a hyperlink? The next thing you need to decide is, should I click on that thing or not? And the next thing that you need to decide is, what's behind door number? And you could get lost all just within your cognitive load. So reading online and reading face-to-face are completely divergent concepts. They're really not parallel ideas at all. So am I saying don't read online? No. Am I saying don't read a book? No. I'm saying you need to teach yourselves and the next generation the differences. One can kind of facilitate creativity, while the other one can distill and help you take some of those divergent ideas and distill them down and make you take it slow innovation style, right? All right, so, and if we don't stop, if we don't give it up, if all we ever do is read online and we get overwhelmed, this is what happens to our stimulation zones, right? Kaboom, and we melt, all right? So the brain is basically like a muscle. It needs to work out, needs variation, all the different variations, right? But it needs time for reparation and relaxation. It truly does. It's been proven over and over and over again that you have to stimulate if you want to really cause that umbelliferous growth. But then if you want to distill and innovate, you have to slow down a little bit. All right, so now we have something like this, where this is a electrodermal skin. They put diodes and stuff on your skin to measure the electricity, which is a fairly good indicator of what your brain is doing, actually, at the time. And as you can see, you have lab, TV, sleep, relax, TV, class, all of these different things, and it makes sense. Sleep is a little bit weird, right? It doesn't seem like that much is going on during sleep, and studying, I feel pretty bored when I study, right? That's because your brain isn't necessarily active when it's stimulated. We'd say that people playing games and TV are overstimulated. Then why is there a flat line? It's not because of the stimulation as much as it is because of your brain actually actively tying things together, beginning to actually smear it around, right? That's really where this electrical activity is coming from. It's going deep into the brain that we're actually moving through it. And this guy right here, Flynn, Dr. Flynn and the Flynn effect, anybody ever heard of this guy? I don't even care. All right, so Flynn studied 60 years of data and found out that in almost every country in the world, basically what was happening is they were getting smarter and smarter and smarter from generation to generation, which most of us would argue with because we see the dumb kids walking around on the street, don't we? But the truth is, IQ scores, depending on whether you're looking at fluid or crystallized intelligence, are actually going up each and every generation. So why are they smart? There's a whole bunch of different reasons. But realistically, there's another guy, Dr. Torrance, who actually discovered that there's a strong lack of creativity in the last 30 years. So we're missing creativity in that innovation piece. And so maybe some of that decline that we feel like we're seeing and understanding and having the concept of is really here, where if you give somebody a weird shape, all they can think of making is maybe a chair. But if you're a little more creative, maybe you can make a bug. Or more creative, you create a whole city that actually has social interactions in it, all based on somebody gives you a paperclip and you're MacGyver, right? So these tests are great predictors, actually, of success and everything. Bottom line here is, can we just sit back and rely on stimulation? No, what do we have to do? We have to dip into, and can we rely on one thing? Can we just be dedicated to music and expect it to take hold and be a beautiful, innovative thing? No. Can we just do no, we can't do any of those things. We have to have this tapestry where we're pulling from all of the different places and slowly, methodically drawing them together. Come on now. I think I may have hit a snafu. Are you able to advance? This is when technology has to veer a little bit. So basically what I go through now is I take you through, This is research that I did. I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of students, parents, 30 or 40 teachers, and here's what the parents said about their students. It makes them, it doesn't do anything. The iPad doesn't do anything, which is more or less not true, because we can actually take a look at individuals in schools that are actually making iPads and one-to-one programs flourish. Why? Because they don't just hand them an iPad and say, go with it, run with it, stimulate your brain. What do? They do what we were just looking at, right? I also just wanted to put this out there that basically we have science, technology, math that actually creates automatically, if all you do is study those things, it will begin to generate your engineering and your arts, your musics. And those things in turn will actually blossom and begin to push that train, that steam engine, even more and more and more, right? And why is this so important? We live in a society, in a world that is no longer stuff-driven, people. All of you really know this. We have a flat world, and we're no longer stuff-driven. Instead, we are knowledge-driven, so we have to grow in these areas. We have to be innovative. We have to be creative. It's where the money comes from. So there's this creepy web, right, that can actually track you and follow you, and you go ahead and snap a photo of that if you want to, and you can have this presentation. It's all yours. But basically, I'll know who you are, and I'll know how many people snapped a photo of it, because it will track and follow you, right? And there's things like Pandora that learn from you. And then we have video games that actually give you candy, like you have Skylander, where you walk around, and every time you take a step, thousands of points flourish, because we need that instant gratification. But we have all these technologies that are able to bring these things to us, which is, we live in a world that is crazy and amazing, that now we can take and make truly personalized learning environments, and it's coming. We see it already. We see these adaptive learning environments that actually allow me to go into a classroom, you to go into a classroom. We get two completely different experiences based on the metrics, based on the personal learning environments, and all of those things. So what's the bottom line? Paint. What's the bottom line here? I did another study where students actually went in and they told me how many hours of whatever they watched and how much computer hours they did. And then we tested and went and saw how they did on their actual math tests. And you know what we discovered? All these kids right here, I don't know if you can see on the top, did pretty much exactly the same as when they were with their teacher. But these kids right here who needed to live in the world of technology did 15 to 25% better on their test every time, because they were living in a world that they understood and that they appreciated. All right? So what do we need to know? I'm here to tell you that there's a predominant molding apparatus that shapes the sand dunes of the Sahara, and it's the wind, right? That's what shapes them. And maybe a little water sometimes. There's a predominant molding apparatus out here, though, for education and more than our future, and it's you. Why am I saying that you can mold more than our future? I'm saying that you can mold the way that we teach our children, the way that we frame our education, and the way that we live our lives, and understand the way that our brains succeed from being stimulated. And that will change more than our future. It will change our future and our children's future and our children's children's future. Got it? So what I want you to do is start painting. Take a little time to relax and begin to peel away the extras. And what do you end up with? A flourishing, beautiful brain. Thank you.